get started with our last part of our series about redemption. So I titled this one "Walk the Line" for obvious reasons, for Mr. Cash. And so what you just kind of watched there was January 13th, 1968. Johnny Cash walked into Folsom Prison in Folsom, California, not as a prisoner, but as a performer. You see, Mr. Cash never spent time in prison, but the prisoners saw him as one of their own. You could say Johnny Cash is really the physician Jesus asked us to be for the sick and the addicted. You could say Johnny Cash truly walked the line, walking line between the sick and the saved. If you have been with us these last few weeks, we've been talking about redemption. God using people we would least expect for his will. We talked about Saul turning into Paul. He killed Christians to feeding Christians spiritually 2,000 years later. Talked about St. Augustine. Now he went from bathing in sexual sin to saving the church. Today we're going to be continuing this theme of redemption with the man in black, John R. Cash. It's 1958. Johnny Cash has just recorded his first string of hits with Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. To name a few, Elvis Presley was also in the room at the time, and the $250,000 Quartet was also in the room at the time. And he was on the road for 4 years straight touring. The rising fame and pressure to produce and pressure on his home life left him using pills to keep afloat. He would take pills to wake up, take pills to stay awake, and take pills to fall asleep. Johnny Cash used and filled this God-sized void in his life with pills instead of Christ. He leaned on them, depended on them. This became his oxygen. Johnny, at the same time, was also not only in just a physical struggle, but also a spiritual struggle as well, emotional struggle. He developed love for June Carter, a huge country music name at the time, and a woman he admired and performed with. All the while his wife of 3 was at home. Not to mention he had missed a string of shows. He would leave 2,000 people waiting for a show that would never happen. So if you think about it, put it in retrospect, this man was losing his career, losing his family, and his faith. Every aspect of his being was being torn to the bone. One Friday, Johnny was supposed to be flown home to his wife and kids after a string of shows. He never came home that week. He took a flight to Texas and went to Mexico, and later was arrested at the airport on the way back. His mugshot was later posted for drug possession. He went back to his Tennessee property with his head hung low, his face splattered all over newspapers and news headlines, and he was really wondering, is this it? He grabbed a flashlight, told himself, I'm going to walk into this cave as far as this flashlight will take me. I'm going to lay on the ground. When that flashlight dies, I'm going to stop, lay on the ground, and I'm going to die too. He was ready to go. He said, I'm at my dead end. He woke up that next morning to the darkness. It covered him. It surrounded him. Somehow he could hear it. He could hear the silence. He could feel it. And in some parts of him, that darkness was a representation of his life. He was always quoted with saying, there's a man named Johnny and there's a man named Cash. The Cash was the darkness and the sin that lived in him. Somehow, that morning when he woke up in that cave, he said a voice came over him and it said, John, go and do my will. Somehow he understood what was being asked. And when he turned around, he saw the end of that cave, and he truly saw the light that morning. Johnny Cash walked out of that cave in Tennessee on his property, walked in with a bunch of troubles, a bunch of burdens, and his life in shambles, and walked out a brand new man. Dropped the addictions. He got his life in order, got his career back on track, almost. He denied himself and carried his cross from that day forward. His first move after becoming clean, with the help of June Carter, who was at his side the entire time, was a suggestion from his pastor to serve prisoners. Johnny said, I can do better. So on January 13th, 1968, Johnny Cash walked into Folsom Prison in Folsom, California, not as a prisoner, but as a performer. See, Johnny Cash never spent time in prison. He's been to jail. He's had mugshots. But he never was truly done hard time. But one thing that's really interesting is if you watch that video, the prisoners saw him as one of their own. A local newspaper at the time posted this. Some people, and he recorded the whole thing, Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison. The headline says, some people may buy it just to hear the audience. The audience is convicts. They can't leave when the show's over. Some of them know what it means when the song talks about murder. The atmosphere is electric, really, really electric. When you listen close, you hear clanging doors, howling, whistling, shouts. At one point, a prison guard comes in and says, mail call, for John R. Williams. So this is an active mic in the middle of this room. And it says, you'll probably never know what it's like, but Johnny Cash does. This album went on to be the #1 live album for many years. Sealed Johnny Cash's name as a country music legend. Johnny Cash later went on to become a Reverend Johnny Cash. Worked side by side with evangelist Billy Graham. Helped to share the gospel to hundreds of millions of people. From that day forward, Johnny Cash put Christ first in his life, and everything else fell into place. This is a prime example of the phrase that we've been using these last few weeks, and that's Jesus does not pursue the polished and perfect, but the persistent with a sprinkle of grit and faith. He looked at people like these prisoners through the lens of Christ. The Folsom Prison concert reminded me how the Pharisees called people like these scum. We're going to read about that here in Luke 5. So for those here and for those watching online, if you'd like to follow along with us, we'll be in Luke 5. This is going to be verse 27 here. It says, as Jesus left the town, he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at his tax collector's booth. Follow me and be my disciple, Jesus said to him. So Levi got up, left everything, and followed him. Later, Levi held a banquet at his home, Jesus as a guest of honor. Many of Levi's fellow tax collectors and other guests also ate with them. But the Pharisees and their teachers of religious law complained bitterly to Jesus. Why do you eat and drink with such scum? I'm going to say that one more time. Why do you eat and drink with such scum? Jesus answered them, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. Healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners and need to repent. So much like these prisoners, or much like these tax collectors here, Christ doesn't see them for their struggles, for their sin. He doesn't see them as these scum, this filth, the gum on the bottom of your shoe. That's the beauty of it. Jesus said it's not the well that need a doctor, it's the sick. Jesus said it's easy to love those who agree and love you in return, but it's true love to walk into the devil's den and reach people where they are. As followers of Christ, we are called to meet people where they are. We aren't called to see people as their addictions or flaws, but as being made in the image of God. Jesus, when he found a sick person, didn't say, what's your credit score? It's a little low, I'm not going to help you, sorry. He didn't say, hey, meet me at the temple or the church. He said, I'll come to where you are. And sometimes he would just say, your faith has made you well. We aren't called to look down on people with struggles, but lend a hand. Everyone in this room has their problems or maybe convictions, things that they carried in here. Maybe it's school, maybe it's work, maybe it's family, maybe it's a sickness, maybe you have a medical report you're waiting on, maybe you have a financial report that's stressing out, maybe it's work is just pulling you too tight. Whatever it may be that you carried in here, somebody in this room is carrying something right now. Maybe I'm talking to you directly, maybe you at home. I'm talking to that part of you right now where you are dragging this stack of bricks on a sled behind you. Whatever is keeping you up at night. Understand no matter how far you fall or how deep the hole you dug, or in Mr. Cash's life, it's not how far you walk into the darkness. Christ will pick you up, dust you off, and say, let's try this again. There is no burden too big, no problem too big that we can't leave right here. In John's life, it was his pills, it was his home situation, it was his job. He had multiple boxes checked there. He left them all in that cave. You were never too far from redemption. You were never too high to reach down and maybe pick someone up along the way. Jesus never cared if they were blind, lame, sick, demon-possessed. He reached out with his hand, picked them up off the cave floor, out of the water, out of the lion's den. Understand, Jesus didn't choose the ones with all the answers, with everything put together. Lives are completely squeaky clean. He chose the ones like Matthew, maybe the most unlikely or maybe unliked. He chose the fishermen. He chose the most ego and pleasure-driven, like St. Augustine. He chose a guy who was literally addicted to pills and alcohol in the midst of an affair, and he still used them. And their ministries will go on forever burned into history. Johnny Cash was redeemed in that cave and thanked the Lord with his life. His life was his thank you letter. He fought for Jesus every step of the way. And I think there's a lot to take from that. And one thing I'm going to leave you with and end this with is I'm going to read his grave plate. John R. Cash, February 1932, September 2003. Psalm chapter 19, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. John R. Cash. We're just going to meditate on those words and say a quick prayer. Father, I thank you so much for the ability to gather here and spend this time with you, Lord. And I just pray that our lives are a thank you letter to you. Sometimes our lives are the only Bible some people read. And I just pray we understand that. We get that. We become your walking hands and feet, Lord. I pray when they see us, they see you. They see your love. They see your care, your tenderness. I pray that no matter what people like ourselves outside these doors are going through, we see them as the image of you. I just pray that we never walk past, we never ignore. We come to care, we come to love. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. All right. Bear with us here, we'll get set up. But as we're getting set up for our second leg of worship here, they'll be walking around with our giving, so feel free. We also have the little cards there in the front for you as well, if you prefer that. And we'll also have the QR code up here.